Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the lecture on brand positioning and repositioning. In this lecture, we are continuing our discussion on this topic. If you recollect, the last discussion that we had in the previous lecture was at the point where we were trying to create space in the minds of the consumer, and we also discussed that the mind of the consumer is very crowded, and no matter which product category we take, we will see that every product category has a reasonable number of brands that are crowding his mind space. And therefore, if you wish to create space in the mind of the consumer with your own brand, with your own product, you will have to apply at least 3 principles with which you can hope to place your brand in his mind, where he can occupy an unoccupied space with a brand, with an idea which is relatively new and which sticks. Now, we also saw 3 ways in which we can create space in the minds of the consumer, and those 3 ways were innovation, experience and unique emotional response. These were the 3 methods we discussed on how we can create space in the mind of the consumer, so that we can position our brand in the consumer's mind. Then we saw these methods with some examples. So, these were some of the examples which we would not go into detail in this lecture. However, the last point that we discussed was in the previous lecture, that we do not have to create space only in the minds of the consumer, but also in the marketplace. And here also we found out that there are 3 possible ways in which we can create space in the marketplace. And those 3 methods were: first, if a brand is being launched by a reputed corporate house, it suddenly creates space in the marketplace for a new product. Another aspect that we saw was strong POPs and PODs. We also discussed in a very elementary manner what is POP and what is POD, which is points of parity and points of difference. We will see these concepts in greater detail in today's lecture. And then finally, the method that we discussed was identify and exploit a gap. Now, this is not very easy to do, and even if you identify, exploiting that gap requires a Herculean task. Here perhaps I can give you an example, and that is again an example from a media house called ABP, which is one of the largest media house in eastern India. Now, if you are aware, ABP has a large number of Bengali magazines, and these magazines are from different, cater to content of different genre. For example, there is a magazine called Shananda, which is something like English or a Bengali version of Femina magazine. So, Shananda is one such magazine which comes out of ABP media house. Then there is another magazine that they have, which is called Desh. This magazine is very old. It is nearly 100-year-old, and it represents the literary and intellectual tradition of Bengal. This is a very respected magazine in Bengal and in Bengali language. Another magazine that they have, that ABP House has, is called Anand Lok. It is something like Star Dust, where it talks about stars of the cinema world and their lives and their public life, private life, what is happening in their career and so on so forth. So, that is a magazine called Anand Lok. And then there is a magazine called Anand Mela. Anand Mela is a magazine which is for children, where you have children's stories and comics and so on so forth. And Anand Mela is for children up to 12, 13, 14-year-old. So, this is from about 8-year-old to about 10, 12-year-old children. This magazine caters to the need of such people in that age bracket. Now, at one point of time, ABP decided, or it felt, or perhaps it identified, that there is an age group of about 13 to 20 or 14 to 20, the adolescents, for whom they do not have any product, any magazine in the Bengali language. So, they decided that this gap, we have realized that it exists and we must fill this gap with a new product. And since the SBU, the Strategic Business Unit that is dealing with this, is Bengali magazines, so the new product will have to be another Bengali magazine. And then a new Bengali magazine was launched, and that was called Unish Kudi. Unish Kudi, if you understand Bangla or if you understand Hindi also, you will realize that Unish Kudi means 1920, and 1920 means this was a magazine that was catering to children or adolescents who were in the age bracket of about 17 to 20. Now, you must, being a marketer, should be able to appreciate the business potential of this magazine, because 18 to 20 years is the period when students they are largely students, and they are in their undergraduate studies. They are perhaps they have just completed their school and they have entered the college. So, if that is the target audience for which this magazine was created. Now, you must also understand that this is also a target group which is trying to find its feet in terms of forming its taste, what it likes, what it does not like in terms of consumption. And if you catch them young, you would be able to retain them all their life. So, this magazine had great advertisement potential, because all brands were targeting this target group of people, and therefore, this magazine was a big success. So, what I am trying to say is that creating space in the marketplace can be done in these three ways, can be done in many ways, but at least these three ways you must be aware of, that when you launch a product, if it comes from a reputed company, a reputed corporation, it is easier for that company to create space. And then when you launch a product, it must have strong POPs and strong PODs. These concepts we will deal in greater detail in the next slide. And if you can identify and exploit a gap or an underserved or unserved segment in the market. Now, let us look at what are these POPs and PODs. Now, all of us know that marketplace is a crowded place. It is crowded, not just crowded with people, but it is crowded with products, it is crowded with brands, and all of them are trying to rival one another, or all are trying to outshout each other in catching the attention of people. And just shouting is not enough. All of us know that simply being loud and shouting at the top of your voice and asking consumers to walk into your store and buy your product is not enough, because consumers look for value. Consumers look for value in different form, not just in concrete form, but also in abstract form, as we have seen throughout this course on brand management so far. So, where does this value come from? This value comes from POPs and PODs. We will discuss these POPs and PODs now. Now, as we have seen so far, that POP is points of parity and POD is points of difference. Now, definition of points of parity, and let me go to points of parity first, because this is the most difficult thing to do. It is not that POD is easy, but POP is equally difficult, and POP is not necessarily unique to the brand, but in fact may be shared with other brands. This requires a little discussion and understanding. Now, let us say that there are two phones in the marketplace and they are Apple and Samsung. Now, both are popular brands, and a large number of people are buying these two brands of mobile phones. Now, suddenly a new brand, say Vivo or Oppo, enters the marketplace. Now, what is your first concern? It is possible that Oppo or Vivo are slightly cheaper than both Apple and Samsung. But what really is your concern? I mean, you may be happy to buy a phone at 20k or 20,000 rupees when a similar phone by Samsung is available at 40,000 rupees. So, you might be quite happy to get a phone for 20,000 rupees, but you will have some concerns. And what are those concerns? Those concerns are that will this phone, Oppo or Vivo, be able to perform as well as Samsung or Apple? Will it have similar product features? Will it have a camera which is as good if not better, or at least when I take a picture of an event or of a family member, it will be of reasonably good quality. When I make a phone call, the voice quality, the sound quality, clarity will be good enough when I make a phone call. Will it have a good battery life? Will it, if it falls accidentally from my hand, will it break into pieces, or it will have a sturdiness, and so on so forth. So, there will be many concerns that we will have, because we do not know whether this brand Oppo or Vivo can fulfill my basic requirements from a mobile phone. Now, when this company Oppo or Vivo are launching a mobile phone in the marketplace which rivals Samsung or Apple, they will have to ensure that the service or the product features that are offered by Samsung and Apple, at least the basic functions, are also available in their product. Because if they are not available, consumers may not even want to try it out, try a new brand, and therefore your product will fail. So, it is very, very important that when a new brand or a new product is being launched in the marketplace, they must look at this idea called points of parity. So, what they must do? They must look at their competitors and see what are the product features that competitor is offering, and the new brand or the new company must decide point by point that yes, if this is a product feature available in my competitor, I will also give this product feature, and point by point it must consciously decide whether it is offering or it is not offering. And if it decides that it is not offering a certain product feature, it better have good reasons to argue that why it is not offering a certain product feature. And they may say that it is fine, a product which is charging 40,000 rupees can offer that feature, and since I am charging 20,000, this product feature is not necessary, and it is not a feature that people generally use. So, this is something that every product manager and every brand manager must think about, because only if you have points of parity you can move to points of difference, because points of parity, when it becomes a lack, which means there are certain product features which are present in the competitor but not present in your product, can become a deterrent for a consumer to go ahead and buy your product. So, it is very, very important that a product manager and the brand manager thinks about this idea called points of parity and matches point by point all, if not all, at least majority of the product features that a competitor brand is offering. Another point here that we must look at is that it is true that your product may not be an exact substitute of another product, and you may be offering something new, you may be offering something different, and in that case this points of parity may not be fully applicable to your brand. But even if that is the case, you must think about this concept called points of parity, and with awareness you must either accept or disregard certain product features which you are offering or you are not offering. So, that is what I think points of parity is, and it is perhaps more important for long term survival of your brand than even points of difference, because points of parity assures the customer that your product will actually deliver the basic services. And often we see that many advanced products, they may offer many advanced solutions, but they falter on basic solutions and basic services. So, it is like the bare minimum, and unless you do the bare minimum, you can't really graduate to the higher level. So, that is why I always suggest to the product and the brand managers that please take greater care of points of parity before you even think of points of difference. Points of difference, as you can see in the definition, that they are attributes or benefits that consumers strongly associate with a brand, positively evaluate and believe that they could not find to the same extent with a competitive brand. Now, see, this of course, because we are doing a course on brand management. So, the very idea of brand is that it distinguishes one from the other. So, points of difference is an obvious thing that it will happen if you are talking about a brand and you are managing a brand. However, in this case, and when it comes to POP and POD, POD is slightly different. POD is more at the product level rather than at the brand level. It can be at the brand level also, but it is more concrete and it is more at the level of product features. At the brand level, as I have said earlier, you can also think of POD, for example, difference between Lux and Lifebuoy. Lux is like a soap for celebrities and Lifebuoy is a germ kill. It helps you in leading a hygienic life. So, that can also be considered as points of difference, but here it is more about attributes and benefits that consumers strongly associate with a brand which they do not find in the competitor's brand. If you want, we can give you an example, and that example is, again let us go back to the idea, the product called mobile phones. You see that Oppo phone, Oppo brand, they advertise themselves as camera phone. They always call themselves as camera phone. Now, it is not that in Apple phone or in Samsung you do not have camera, all of them have camera, but Oppo is presenting itself as not just a phone, but it is a camera phone. Alright. And I often, because I belong to a telecom sector and I have spent some time there and I perhaps understand a little more. So, I remember that at one point of time we used to joke about this fact that there are 3 types of phones in telecom industry, and those 3 types were: first category we used to call as just a phone. Alright. So, a phone which is just a phone, which is not anything else. Today perhaps we will call feature phones as just a phone. So, first category we discussed or we thought was in telecom industry, that a phone which is just a phone. The second category, which we will also talk about, which we will often joke about at that time, today it is a reality, but at that time we will joke about it and we will say it is also a phone. So, first category just a phone, second category also a phone. So, it is many things and it is also a phone. So, like I have given you the example of Oppo. Oppo says that it is not a phone, it is a camera phone. So, second category we used to talk about is also a phone. And third category was like an exclamation, is it a phone? And that is how we will speak. So, when you look at the phone, you will realize that perhaps it is not a phone, it is something else. So, for example, an Apple Watch, which also performs the function of a phone. So, we will probably move in that direction, and the nature or the shape and the form of phone will change over a period of time, and it will start becoming available in many different forms. So, what I am trying to say is that in these 3 categories of just a phone, also a phone, and is it a phone, in these 3 categories we can see how we apply the ideas of points of parity and points of difference. If this is clear, let us move forward. Now, how do we choose POPs and PODs? If you take a look at this slide, you will see that there are 2 aspects to it. One is desirability criteria and second is deliverability criteria. One is from consumer's perspective and second is from the firm's perspective. Now, desirability means what? It should be desirable, and desirable to whom? Desirable to consumer, obviously consumer, because it is the consumers who would buy your product. Now, how do you structure or how do you define this desirability criteria? Since we are looking at it from consumers perspective, we must understand that desirability will come from it being a personally relevant POP and POD. So, for example, say in a phone, if you give an option of customization of the screen, now all phones nowadays give customization of screen, but you know that Samsung offers an edge phone, and in that edge phone you can select some apps which you use more often. Now, this is relevant to everybody because in every phone you have 20, 30, 40, 50 apps. However, what you use regularly is only 5-6 apps. So, is it possible to have an edge, have a band where only those 4-5 apps which you use regularly are displayed? Now, if you can do that technologically, it becomes very desirable. So, this from a consumer's perspective is definitely relevant and desirable. If you realize that in one band you can put only 3 because screen is small, and you can put only 3 or 4 apps on that band in that edge. So, is it possible that that band is actually a dynamic band, alright, and as you use those apps, the apps which get figured, which get displayed in that band also keeps changing. So, through technology you can achieve that, and maybe some brand like Samsung might be able to do, Oppo may not be able to do. So, this way what happens is, while you are offering a feature which Samsung can do and Oppo can also do, but Samsung can do it slightly better because it is charging more money, and therefore, it can invest in better technology. So, this way Samsung becomes distinctive and it becomes superior to another brand which is making its product available at a lower price. So, this is how desirability criteria can be understood from a consumer's perspective. So, it should be personally relevant, it should be distinctive and superior, and it should be believable or credible. So, if it comes from a reasonably known company, you will believe that what they are offering will actually be available in the product and you will be able to use it. So, desirability criteria comes from consumer's perspective, and while you are choosing POP and POD, you must be aware that what perhaps are the desirable factors that consumers may want from your product. Next point is deliverability criteria. Now, deliverability has many constraints. Desirability is a conceptual exercise. You can do market research, you can rely on your own intuition, you can talk to people in your team, you can talk to some consumers and then decide that these are the things that consumers want. But just because consumers want does not mean that you will actually give them, and even if you want to give them, there is a cost involved. And what is that cost? That cost can be company, and that cost can be money because you will have to invest, you have to buy, or it can be people. You may have in your technology team, maybe you have only 5 people, what you need is 5 more people, and that may not be possible to do very quickly. So, it may not be very feasible, and then it may also be possible that that technology has not yet evolved, or that know-how is not available in the market. So, even if consumers want it, you are not in a position to give it because it is not just not available, it is just not possible. So, that is why it is important for brand managers to understand that deliverability criteria involves feasibility. So, whether it is possible to do, whether it is possible to do within a reasonable time frame and within reasonable cost, because just to offer one product feature, if you have to invest say lakhs and lakhs of rupees, and then the price of that product which otherwise was 40,000 becomes 75,000, then it is of no use, because just for that product feature people may not pay 20,000 or 30,000 more just for the same mobile phone. So, as a brand manager, you must understand that the profitability criteria of any product feature, whether it is POP or POD, POP is fine, but POD in particular, if you wish to have, you must think of the feasibility and profitability angle. You must also think of preemptive, defensible and difficult to attack elements. This means that you are going for the kill. You are trying to have a product feature, a POD, which nobody else has, or and you are doing it in such a manner that even if someone tries to copy it, they will not be able to copy it very easily. And this often happens through the idea of design. So, when you do it differently, when it looks different, when the elegance, the aesthetics you change as per your designer's ability, you can copyright it and you can prevent others from copying it. So, these are the factors that you must consider when you are thinking of choosing your POPs and PODs. Again, desirability criteria from consumer's perspective and deliverability criteria from the firm's perspective. Thank you very much.